Okay, so I love my tennis.
Die hard.
And I was watching US Open,
Mhm.
the men's final, I mean, the biggest match there is. And then the TV was kind of on. I was puttering around and I saw this infomercial about Roth IRA for highly compensated, people who have kind of accumulated throughout their life and have a fair amount of money to invest. And I talked to you about it, thinking, is this a good idea or not? And you had very definite ideas on that.
Yeah.
Talk to me about it.
Okay. So, in general, Roth IRA has created a really great opportunity for most Americans, a place for you to accumulate money that's tax free, right? So, in concept, great idea. However, it's now being marketed as this cure all, almost like that a Roth IRA is complete tax planning. And to be honest, it's not. I mean, it is a tool. So if you can convert your taxable money in a retirement account, a traditional IRA or a 401k, if you can convert it over to tax free, it sounds amazing,
Right.
right? Who doesn't love tax free? But if the cost to get it there is way higher than what it's going to be taxed at when you retire, you have to step back and say, okay, I'm currently in the 32% tax bracket. If I convert more money, it could elevate me as high as 37. When I get into retirement, I'm very confident I could live at 22 or even 12%. So you have to say to yourself, why would I pay tax now in a high bracket when I retire, I can be in a low tax bracket? We had a physician come in. He's accumulated about $4 million in his retirement, primarily contributing, maxing out a 401k plan. And he said, hey, I saw this commercial on TV. How about I convert $1 million from IRA to Roth? And he'd already worked 2/3 of the year. And so his income was high. And if we would have converted $1 million, we would have paid tax at 37% federal and just under 5% for the state of Utah.
Wow.
So he would have lost. So on $1 million conversion, his net amount would be roughly $580,000.
How come that isn't being disclosed or understood?
Well, one, I think a lot of guys just don't disclose it because they don't want to give tax advice, yet they're marketing a Roth IRA, which sounds confusing. But they do that because remember, if I would have just rolled with this physician's plan, if I was a guy out selling annuities, that guy represents to me roughly, if he did $1 million, I could make between $80,000 to $100,000 in commissions on one transaction.
And do you have to follow up? I mean,
Well, that's the hard part. If you were building a house, would you give all the money to a contractor day one?
No.
Say, here's all my.
Absolutely not.
No, right? Because you'd be like, this guy may not come back.
Right.
And so what you would do is you're like, well, hey, I'm building this house. How about I pay you as we go? And if you build this fantastic house, I'm going to be more than happy to pay you. But the problem is the way annuities work, the vast majority of them only pay up front. And I checked in with an expert on insurance this morning. We're currently the best indexed annuity out there, if you're only looking at commissions, pays 10%.
Wow.
So like I said, if you walked in with $1 million and said, hey, I've got $1 million in my 401k plan, I want to convert it to an IRA or to a Roth IRA, will you do it for me? And a lot of these guys on TV are lining up and they're excited to show you how you're going to have tax-free money. But they will move the $1 million and they'll move it over there. A lot of them aren't going to tell you, oh, by the way, come March, April, when taxes are due, you need to pay the $420,000 that are due.
Is it a bait and switch, in your opinion?
It's not a bait and switch. It's just not disclosed because then they'll say, well, hey, you need to run this past your tax advisor.
So that lets them off the hook.
They're literally stepping back, and there are firms and there are, once again, we're dealing with insurance. So there are agents out there that they'll do part of the job. And I did, and I will tell you, there's a firm here in Salt Lake. I had a guy come in. He was still working. He was making about $160,000 a year, so really well-paying deal. His wife also worked, and she was making about 40. So their combined income was about $200,000 on their tax return. They saw one of these commercials, and they went and met with the company, and they encouraged him to move $300,000 of his 401k to a Roth IRA. It's called an in-service distribution. He was still working, but they moved it over to an IRA. On that conversion to a Roth, that $300,000 moved from 401k to Roth. They moved it out of an investment, out of his 401k, and into an indexed annuity. That indexed annuity paid an upfront commission. When he went to do his taxes, you think about it, he ended up having to come up with about a third of the conversion to pay the taxes. Where was he going to get it?
Where did he get it?
Well, he got it out of his savings. He and his wife were saving up to buy a lot in Richfield, Utah. And instead of buying a lot, they paid taxes on their Roth conversion.
Did he feel taken advantage of? Or
he was confused. And yeah, I mean, he was just frustrated because he really wanted to own ground where he grew up. And instead, he paid taxes. So what's frustrating is there was never that explanation that can happen. The agent that made the transition, he doesn't want to take some of the money and pay taxes because then he wouldn't get a commission on the full amount.
And it's a high commission, right?
Like I
you're
said,
highly motivated.
do the math, somewhere between 7 and 10% of 300,000.
Wow.
It's pretty common.
Is there anyone that it is a good deal for, that it makes sense?
Absolutely. We all the time, we talk about what bracket are you in now? Where do you think you'll be in retirement? And if you can't put together that cash flow, then come in and meet with us. That's what we do. Is we'll sit down and we'll say, hey, based off of what you've been accumulating and the rate that you're accumulating in your retirement, let's have a plan. But why would you, if you're, once again, we're in these years where we're basically we're getting paid more than we've ever been paid, right? We're at the top end of our income.
Which means our taxes.
Which means that we're up in the higher tax brackets. So you start thinking, should I be paying taxes at 24 or 32 or 35? The top one's 37. If you're in those tax brackets, why would you be paying tax now when you know that down the road, if you work with an advisor, most clients, we top out at the 24%. And for the majority, for probably 90% of our clients, we target not leaving the 12% tax bracket. So you think to yourself, okay, should I be paying tax now at 35 when my advisor shows me how I can pay it at 12 or 22?
Right. Doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make any sense at all. Plus, you got to remember that money can compound. So if you pull it out and pay tax now, it's not in your account generating an income.
There's so much information out there.
Right.
It's just you're inundated with it. And a lot of people have that kind of DIY approach, thinking, do I want to pay an advisor? Do I, can I just do this on myself and figure that out? And it doesn't seem like it's the best.
Yeah, for some people it is. Yeah. I will tell you, there's some people I talk with, they're so savvy. They've taken the time to learn tax brackets and the rules around investments. So for some people, yes. But even a ton of my super savvy clients that were very dialed in at 55 and 60, they're now my friends that are in their late 70s and 80s. And they are so appreciative that they became my client 20 years ago, because so much of that has passed by them. A lot of my clients, when we meet, we'll go grab lunch, we'll talk about life and the kids and grandkids and family. I'll talk to them about their health and where they are. And what's nice is the relationship, it's changed, and now they don't worry. In fact, some of them get frustrated because I'll want to do a review with them financially, and they'll say, hey, Dave, I know you've got that covered. And yet I still will take 5 to 10 minutes to give them an accounting of where they are and catch them up. But to be quite honest, what's most important to them is to know that I still am in the game and I care about them and I'm watching out for them.
So people who are highly compensated, and these infomercials and all this information is written in a way that seems pretty appealing, it's pretty slick. What advice would you give? I mean, nobody wants to pay more in taxes than they have to.
One, I would say the easiest thing would be is to gather up your tax return for the last couple of years and your financial statements, and especially if you don't feel like it's going the way you thought, right? Isn't it easy just to be like, well, maybe I should be doing better. Maybe I shouldn't be paying so much in tax. That's where we open up the door. Call us. Come in and let us sit down and analyze both your tax situation and your investment situation. At a minimum, you'll walk out feeling confident in what you're doing. But generally, this is what we do. This is taking your finances to the financial mechanic and letting him go through and pointing out things that are going well, things that aren't. Nothing better when your car you take your car in and the mechanic says, hey, it looks great. Change the oil. You're doing awesome.
Right.
I love that. You're not going to have to blow some money on your car.
Right.
But I also appreciate the mechanic that will take a second and say, hey, you probably have about 6 months left on your brakes, or in the next year or so, you're going to need to go through and make this change. Don't you feel just, because then all of a sudden you're not quite paying so much attention to your car, you feel comfortable. And if you know that you are working with a mechanic that is worried about your car and servicing your car forever, I love my guys. They take care of all of my things. Yeah, and they take care of my vehicles. I just take it to them because I know they're going to be straight up with me.
Yeah.
And how many nightmare stories where you have where, mechanics are just gouging people.
So real talk, highly compensated people, there's a really short window of time, right? You're highly compensated now and you're nearing retirement. It's a critical period of time where you have to be astute and really smart.
Yeah, you think about it, you get to those final 10 years of your career, and maybe, you might be a professional, or you might be a manager at some level, or you might be a business owner. We see huge opportunities to come in and make sure you're completely financially efficient. Once again, we have guys come in all the time that they've been sold on putting some of their retirement in Roth. And we're like, you realize you're in the 35% tax bracket plus 5 for Utah. You're losing 40%. And yet they're walking around on cloud nine that they're in a Roth IRA. And I'm just looking at them like, if I ask you point blank, would you rather pay 35% in tax or 12? Which would you choose?
I would choose 12.
You would, right?
Yeah.
And yet that's how simple the real decision is. But because it's wrapped up and people are enticed with things like tax-free and those types of things, they just aren't getting the right advice. So if you're a do-it-yourselfer, great. We have some info on our website. Go study that. There's great information out there on the internet. I love watching some of the videos. I love watching some that are just sales wrapped up as though it's financial advice. And then there's some other really great guys around the country that have great strategies. I watched a video the other night on how to live on $100,000 of income in retirement and not pay a dime in tax. And if your structure is the right one, that's very legitimate. You really can live on $100,000 without paying tax, but you got to know the rules and you got to know how to do it.
And people like you are going to help us do that.
Yeah.
We don't know the rules.
What's so crazy is if I can look and see how you're structured, I can literally say, hey, you're a candidate to live on $100,000 and not pay a dime in tax.